Hello everyone, my name is Greg Parton and I am a Senior Loss Control Consultant with the Kentucky League of Cities Insurance Services. I'd like to welcome you to this 4-part series on methods for defensive driving. Did you know that traffic accidents are the leading cause of workplace fatalities? According to the latest figures, these accidents account for 40% of all workplace fatalities in this country. And keep in mind, these figures do not include those accidents that result in non-fatal injuries, which are oftentimes debilitating to both the person and their families. Although the number of transportation-related deaths have generally been on the decline, they are still epidemic in our nation and are a loss source with significant economic impact in our own communities. Let's face it, we spend much of our lives, including both our working and personal lives, in some type of vehicle. Cities and other public agencies have properties that are often spread over long distances. This leads to even greater exposure to transportation risk, more so than most private employers. This training is intended to give you some useful information and tools to help you drive in a more defensive manner, regardless of the type of vehicle you operate, to prevent you from becoming another statistic. I sincerely ask that you consider incorporating these techniques and the information being provided into your own driving habits, and please share them with your coworkers and your family members so that we can all share the road in a more responsible and safer manner. Thank you, and please drive safe. Well, I hope you enjoyed that short video. Although these video clips can certainly be entertaining to watch, it sort of gives you a small sample of the significant exposure we all have every day. These were all near-miss incidents, which could have ended much worse. Both on and off the job, operating or driving in a motor vehicle is one of the most frequent and one of the most dangerous things we all do. It's imperative that we keep this in mind and be willing to keep safety a priority when we are on the road. My name is Greg Parton. I'm a Senior Loss Control Consultant with the Kentucky League of Cities Insurance Services. Here's my contact information. Feel free to contact me with any questions. We've titled this presentation, Methods for Defensive Driving. There are several very simple methods you can use to prevent losses while driving. Some of us have incorporated these methods into our driving habits, others have gotten out of the habit, and some have never really formed sound defensive driving habits. Part of this process is identifying the causes of these losses, analyzing the information, then establishing control methods. You'll see this type of information and we'll be discussing it in some detail. Our goal is that you pick up some useful safe driving information that will become a habit for you. This training is actually a 4-part series. In other words, there are 4 separate modules, with each module covering a different aspect of defensive driving. Don't hesitate to contact me or your loss control representative with any questions or if you need further information or additional services. The goals of this presentation are really simple: to identify safe driving practices and behaviors and encourage you, the driver, to put them into use. Throughout these modules, you'll see various statistics and claims information that reinforces the need to implement methods for defensive driving. The Kentucky League of Cities Insurance Services provides insurance coverage to more Kentucky municipalities than any other insurer. So with that comes the benefit of analyzing large amounts of claims data to identify trends. We'll be sharing some of that information. Statistically speaking, if you haven't had some of these driving issues and you don't have the proper controls in place, they'll soon be knocking at your front door. There's also several short video clips that may help explain various concepts. In addition, there are several other considerations like pre-trip inspections, making proper vehicle adjustments to fit the driver, and seatbelt usage that will also be discussed and will be the focus of this first module. Accidents are generally caused by two types of unsafe behaviors, human and driving. Both of these are important factors, and it's the unsafe driving behaviors that account for most traffic accidents. In their last report, the U.S. Department of Labor Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that 4,679 employees died on the job. What immediately stands out as you review this pie chart is that the biggest slice of the pie is attributable to transportation incidents, which accounted for 40% of all workplace fatalities. Sadly, this was the same percentage as their previous report. Roadway incidents alone accounted for nearly 1 out of every 4 fatalities. And in case you're wondering, transportation incidents categorized as other include pedestrian traffic as well as railway accidents. Just to summarize this chart a little further, falls, slips, and trips were the second leading cause of occupational fatalities in their last report at 17% of all fatalities. This is mostly related to falls to a different level where there is a significant impact. This is followed very closely by violence and other injuries by persons or animals at 16% of all fatalities. Violence in the workplace remains to be a considerable occupational exposure as the third leading cause of workplace fatalities. To bring this a little closer home, this Kentucky Transportation Cabinet report includes all motor vehicle accidents reported in Kentucky in a year's time. This includes vehicles driven for both work and personal reasons. In their Traffic Collision Facts book, the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet stated that 612 persons were killed on Kentucky's highways, where on average 1.68 lives are lost per day in Kentucky. Almost 23,000 persons were injured, and there were 151,180 crashes, which equates to an average of a crash about every 3.5 minutes on Kentucky's roadways. And think about some of the economic impacts we deal with as a result of these vehicle crashes. You have to consider possible loss of income, car repairs, insurance rate increases, and lawsuits. According to the U.S. Center for Disease Control, crashes cost each licensed driver in the United States about $500 per year and cost the country's economy as a whole as much as $100 billion. To bring this even closer to home, among the Kentucky League of Cities insurance members, a total of 2,616 auto-related claims were reported over the past 3 years. These claims came with a cost of over $12.2 million to the insurance program. These numbers include all auto liability and auto physical damage claims. Just so everyone is familiar, auto liability claims involves accidents where another motorist is involved. Auto physical damage claims involves accidents where there are damages to your own vehicles. So some of these claims could have involved the same accident. To put this into perspective, the 2,616 auto-related claims reported accounted for 54% of all liability claims over the past 3 years. When I say all liability claims, I'm not only including auto-related claims, but I'm also including commercial general liability claims, law enforcement, public officials, sewer liability, crime, and bad faith claims. From a cost perspective, they accounted for 45% of the total cost to the liability insurance program. This gives you the overall big picture of the claims experience. We'll be looking at these claims with much greater detail in some of the latter sessions, so stay tuned for that. Auto-related claims are generally tracked as an auto liability exposure. But when employees involved in these accidents are injured, it results in a workers' compensation claim. So from the workers' compensation side of insurance, auto claims involving collision or sideswipe with another vehicle ranked as the #1 cause of injury among the Kentucky League of Cities insurance members, with a cost of almost $3 million over the past 3 years. So on average, right at $1 million per year has been paid for these types of claims over the last 3 years. We've also received workers' compensation claims where employees were struck or injured by a motor vehicle. And you can see how severe these claims can be, with almost $1.6 million in incurred cost for the 17 claims reported the last 3 years. When you combine just these two causes of claims together, they account for almost 1/5 of all workers' compensation claims received from a cost perspective. Of course, injuries due to strains and sprains, slips and falls, and cuts and scrapes account for the causes of the majority of other workers' compensation insurance claims. So we've seen the data, and now that we know how prevalent and how costly these accidents can be, we have to establish a strategy to prevent them in the future. We must incorporate defensive driving methods into our driving habits to see any real change. The concepts presented in this class are a form of training for drivers that goes beyond mastery of the rules of the road and the basic mechanics of driving. The American National Standards Institute, otherwise known as ANSI, in their Standard for Safe Practices for Motor Vehicle Operations, Z15.1, define defensive driving as driving to save lives, time, and money in spite of the conditions around you and the actions of others. To put it another way, defensive driving techniques help keep us focused on just driving and the actions of others around us so we can keep our odds of having a crash as low as possible. Defensive driving saves lives, can keep us free from debilitating injuries, and keeps the cost of crashes and collisions minimized. Before we even turn that ignition switch, and before we talk about unsafe human and unsafe driving behaviors, part of defensive driving is ensuring the vehicle you are driving is mechanically safe. There are a number of safety-related checks that we should be performing ourselves before we drive. Drivers need to know what to check on the vehicle and how to spot defects, who to call when there is a problem, and how and when to submit documentation if necessary. We need to be checking items such as tire wear and inflation, headlights, taillights, directional signals to ensure they are working properly, fluid levels such as engine oil, antifreeze, and washer fluid, and fluid leaks that may have accumulated under the vehicle while it was parked. Basic vehicle inspection and maintenance points such as these can help you control cost and keep drivers safe on the road. A properly executed vehicle inspection can help you discover unsafe conditions before they cause accidents or crashes and find mechanical problems before they lead to breakdowns. You need to be completely familiar with any pre-trip inspection requirements your agency may have in place. If you aren't aware, ask your supervisor. If a pre-trip inspection program hasn't been established, it's critical that you begin working on one to protect against possible accidents and legal litigation. Feel free to contact us should you need any assistance with developing a pre-trip inspection program. We need to make sure our vehicles are in good working order. Doing so can greatly decrease the odds of us having problems that could lead to a breakdown or crash. There is a lot we can do on our own to ensure this, but we must not forget that there are many other aspects of vehicle maintenance that may need to be left to a qualified mechanic. The best source of information about scheduled maintenance is from the vehicle manufacturer. The owner's manual that came with the vehicle should include a scheduled maintenance booklet that can help us make sure the proper maintenance is performed. The chart on the left of the screen was taken from the Kentucky Traffic Collision Facts Book. These facts books are put together after compiling data from police accident reports from around the state. Each of these vehicular factors were at least a contributing factor to the number of collisions listed. In other words, tire failure was a contributing factor to the non-fatal collisions shown in the chart. The Vehicle Inspection Record Book, shown on the right, is a free resource for our Kentucky League of Cities insured members. It's a great tool for documenting your weekly vehicle inspections. It also provides quick references for contact information for reporting claims and also how to properly handle situations where you've had a collision with another driver. It can be especially valuable when used in litigation cases for defending against negligent maintenance claims. Feel free to contact me or your loss control representative or our office to obtain copies of these booklets. So speaking of tires, how do you determine the correct tire pressure for the vehicles in your fleet? The correct tire pressure for a vehicle is located in several locations. The owner's manual provides the correct tire pressure, along with the data plate located on the door jamb of the vehicle. The data plate may be located on the driver or passenger side door jambs. Don't confuse the maximum tire pressure listed on the sidewall of the tire with the recommended tire pressure provided by the manufacturer of the vehicle. This can be misleading and ultimately lead to tire ruptures and accidents. The recommended tire pressure is where all tires should be maintained. Tire air pressure should be checked more frequently during cooler months because tires will always lose pressure in cold weather. How much depends on the outside temperature. Expect about a 1 pound per square inch pressure drop for every drop in temperature of 8 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit. Check tires when they are cold. This means before you have driven on them. Visual inspections really do not work well when it comes to determining tire pressure. Tires will change shape and curvature as the temperature, pressure, and weight changes. Your eyes can deceive you, so rely on a tire gauge for an accurate reading. If you aren't familiar with the vehicle you are driving, you can easily become distracted when locating and trying to figure out how various controls operate. You need to be completely familiar with where the windshield wiper controls, headlight controls, and other basic controls are located and how they operate. At 60 miles per hour, a vehicle travels 176 feet in 2 seconds. How long do you think it would take to figure out where an unfamiliar control is located, and how far would you travel while trying to find that control? It is important that you are completely familiar with the vehicle you are expected to operate. Not only do different vehicles have different basic controls, but they also have different handling characteristics, braking characteristics, and blind spots. If you are not familiar with how to operate a particular vehicle or piece of equipment, ask for assistance before you take any unnecessary risk. You, as the driver, may be held responsible if something goes wrong. Making necessary adjustments to fit the driver are also key safety factors that must be considered before you drive. Try to form a habit of making any adjustments before turning on the ignition. Proper seat position, mirror adjustments, hand positioning on the steering wheel, and fastening seatbelts may have become routine habits for us each time we drive, but we need to ensure that we are focusing on doing this correctly to maximize their effectiveness. In many cases, the work vehicle you drive is shared by other employees who may not necessarily have the same height and build as you have. Adjusting the seat position will allow you to have greater safety and control over the vehicle. So what is a safe position when you drive? Airbags deploy in about 1/20th of a second, so serious injuries can occur if the occupant is too close or in direct contact with the airbag when it first deploys. Since the danger zone for the driver's side airbag is the first 2 to 3 inches of inflation, placing yourself 10 inches from the airbag will provide you with a clear margin of safety. This distance is measured from the center of the steering wheel to your breastbone. If you now sit less than 10 inches away, you can change the driving position in several ways. First, move your seat to the rear as far as you can while still reaching the pedals comfortably. Next, slightly recline the back of the seat. Although vehicle designs vary, many drivers can achieve the 10-inch distance even with the driver's seat all the way forward simply by reclining the back of the seat somewhat. If reclining the back of your seat makes it hard to see the road, raise yourself by using a firm, non-slippery cushion, or raise the seat if your vehicle has that feature. If your steering wheel is adjustable, tilt it downward. This points the airbag toward your chest instead of your head and neck. The vital organs in our chest cavity have much greater protection than our head and neck, so it's better to tilt the steering wheel down. Adjust the head restraint so the back of your head is supported at eye level by the center of the head restraint. Lastly, adjust your mirrors after you have adjusted your seat. It's important to adjust your mirrors correctly to minimize the blind spot. Of course, the blind spot is the name given for the areas on either side of a vehicle that are invisible to side mirrors. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration showed that 18% of all collisions are sideswipe collisions involving vehicles in the process of changing lanes and crashing into a vehicle that the driver didn't see. Blind spots exist on all vehicles. Cars with higher back ends, small windows, and large headrests all contribute to the problem. These blind spots can be reduced, but they can't be eliminated. As a driver, there are a few easy steps you can take to help reduce blind spots. First, ensure your mirrors are properly adjusted before you operate any vehicle. You should also briefly look over your shoulder when changing lanes. It's also important to avoid the blind spots of other vehicles. Don't linger too long in this space. Either pass the vehicle or slow down to ensure the other driver can see you and is aware of your location. Lastly, if you are backing into a space, make certain the area you are backing into is free of small children and other objects. This is a short video that will show you how to properly adjust your vehicle's mirrors to reduce your blind spots.
Do you know the old adage, you have to look before you leap? Well, the same applies to driving. You need to see where you're going to get there safely. And on today's autofocus, I'm going to show you how to properly adjust your side view and your rear view mirror. Yeah, seems simple enough. You adjust your mirrors till you can see behind you and everything's great. But there is a technique so you can see into those blind spots behind your car and see that car coming up behind you. Now, the proper way to adjust your driver's side view mirror is to lean your head all the way over until just about till you touch the glass like this. Then adjust your mirror until you just see beyond your car. You should just see just that little sliver. You shouldn't see that. You're going to adjust just beyond that. What that's going to allow you to do is to see past that blind spot. You don't need to see your car. You need to see the lane next to you and to see the car that's in it. Now, with the passenger side view mirror, you want to lean as far over towards the center as you can and adjust that mirror till you see just beyond your car. That will allow you to see into that 3/4 view blind spot on your passenger side. Now, for the rear view mirror, a lot simpler. Most people do this right. Obviously, you just want to adjust it till you see right behind you. If you're in that Jeep right there and you want to be in this turn lane, what do? You check your side view mirror, you don't see a car there, and you pull on in. And then suddenly, boom, there's a car there. Now, if your mirror was adjusted properly, this is what you would have seen. Take a moment, adjust your mirrors properly. A well-adjusted mirror can actually save your life. I'm Ben Italis with this week's Autofocus.
This method of adjusting your side view mirrors that was shown in the video may seem unorthodox to many of you. You may feel that it is necessary to actually see part of your vehicle in the picture of your side view mirror, but by using this method, it will significantly reduce your blind spots. You just have to remember that your vehicle is just outside of the picture you are seeing in the mirrors. Stick-on or universal clip-on mirrors can also be purchased from most auto parts stores or online. For larger vehicles or those with larger blind spots, you should consider replacing the factory mirrors with versions which will provide a better view of the area. Add-on mirrors, which mount above the factory mirrors, may also be considered. Blind spot indicators are also now available for most vehicle manufacturers. Check with the manufacturer to determine if they are available for your vehicles, or see if you can request that these be added if they are optional equipment on a new vehicle purchase. Many of us were taught to keep our hands at the 10 and 2 locations when referencing a standard clock dial. This was before the invention and widespread use of airbags in our vehicles. Now you want to keep your hands where the 8 and 4 are located on the steering wheel. Your hands positioned at 9 and 3 are also acceptable. Many manufacturers have designed their steering wheels with cutouts to keep our hands at these locations. This will keep your hands and arms out of the airbag's way if it deploys. Your hands and arms can be injured and cause other upper body injuries if struck by the airbag. Also remember to keep your thumbs positioned so they remain outside of the steering wheel. These positions allow you to react more effectively in an evasive maneuver to prevent an accident. Before we leave this session, the most important thing you can do before you drive is fasten your seatbelt. I can't stress enough that a seatbelt must be worn every time you enter your vehicle. Use a seatbelt on every trip, no matter how short. Even vehicle crashes at slower speeds can cause significant injuries, so play it safe, always wear your seatbelt. On top of that, encourage everyone in the car to buckle up, including those in the back seat. It's your responsibility as the driver to ensure everyone is fastened in. This prevents occupants from becoming projectiles inside the vehicle during a crash. Using seatbelts reduces serious crash-related injuries and deaths by about 50%. Airbags provide added protection, but they're no substitute for seatbelts. These devices are intended to complement one another and work together to prevent injuries. This combination of airbags and seatbelts provide the greatest protection for adults. Effective July 12, 2006, Kentucky seatbelt law became a primary or standard enforcement law. This means that law enforcement officers can now stop a vehicle solely for an occupant restraint violation. Previously, Kentucky's law only allowed officers to cite for this violation if some other violation initiated the traffic stop. This concludes this session. I invite you to participate in the next session where we'll be discussing the most common unsafe human behaviors. Thank you, and please drive safe.